The pain shot down my spine like lightning, sharp and unforgiving. I clutched the edge of the kitchen counter, praying the moment would pass. It didn't, and neither did the echo of my son's words from the night before. "Then what good are you?" He had said it plainly, without venom, just like you'd mentioned the weather. But those words didn't just hurt. They hollowed me out. I hadn't raised him to be like this. Or maybe I had, without realizing it. His name is Daniel, my only son. I gave up a lot to raise him, my job, my friends, my sleep, even my marriage. But I never gave up my love for him. Now, at 68, I was supposed to be easing into the warmth of late life, perhaps tending to my small garden, sipping tea on the porch, not dragging my aching body up and down stairs after a 2-year-old every single day. But when I told him I couldn't keep watching my granddaughter every morning, he didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't offer understanding. Just that one sentence. That one crushing sentence. It replayed in my head while I lay on the living room sofa, a heating pad buzzing gently beneath me. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting golden stripes on the worn-out rug Daniel used to play on as a boy. I remembered how he once believed I could fix anything with a kiss, a story, or a bowl of soup. How quickly things change. That morning, I didn't call him. I couldn't. My pride stood taller than my pain. And I knew if I did, I'd crumble into tears he wouldn't know what to do with. Or worse, he'd respond with silence. Instead, I sat. I thought. I remembered. Back when Daniel was 6, he got into a fight at school. A bigger boy had pushed him, and Daniel came home with a torn sleeve and swollen lip. He didn't cry. Not until he saw me. Then it all came pouring out: the fear, the confusion, the shame. I held him so tight he could barely breathe. I didn't need to say much. Just being there was enough. But now it seemed my presence wasn't enough. I had to perform. I had to earn my keep. Around noon, I finally stood up and limped into the kitchen. I made myself a sandwich and stared at the fridge door. It was covered with drawings my granddaughter, Ellie, had made. Stick figures, smiley suns, lopsided houses. I loved that child more than life. That's what made this harder. I didn't resent watching her. I resented being expected to do it like I was a machine, without thanks, without concern, without limits. The doorbell rang. My heart jumped. I wasn't expecting anyone. Moving slowly, I shuffled to the door and opened it. Daniel stood there, holding Ellie. Her arms flew out to me. "Grandma," she squealed. I hesitated. My spine tensed. I hadn't prepared myself for this, not yet. Daniel stepped forward, a little too casually. "Hey, Mom. Thought we could come early. You didn't answer your phone." "I wasn't feeling well," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. He frowned. "But you're okay now, right? I've got a call in 10, and—" "Daniel," I interrupted. "We need to talk." He paused. His eyes narrowed slightly, and he gave Ellie a kiss on the cheek before setting her down. She ran inside, giggling. "What is it now?" he said, trying to keep his tone light, but I could hear the impatience underneath. I folded my arms, not to make a point, but because I needed to brace myself. "I can't do this every day anymore. My back is giving out. I'm tired. I need rest." He looked away, rubbing the back of his neck. "You've always helped. I mean, what else do you even do all day?" There it was. The same question. The one that stung like salt on a wound. "Are you asking me what I'm worth, Daniel?" I said, and this time my voice didn't shake. He shifted uncomfortably. "I'm just saying it's not like you're working or anything. And childcare is expensive." "I know it is. I raised you alone, remember?" That shut him up. I took a breath, softer now. "I love Ellie. I want to see her. But I can't be your full-time nanny. I'm not built for that anymore. I need you to see me as more than just a service." For a moment, he said nothing, just looked at the ground. Then he sighed. "I didn't mean it the way it sounded. I'm stressed." I didn't think. I wanted to believe him. I needed to. But part of me also knew this conversation was long overdue. "You didn't think because you didn't have to," I said. "You knew I'd say yes. I always have." He finally met my eyes. "I'm sorry." We stood in silence. Ellie's laughter echoed from the living room, light and innocent. "I'll find another arrangement," Daniel said after a moment. "Maybe part-time daycare. Maybe work from home more." "You'll figure it out," I said gently. "That's what parents do." He nodded slowly. "I didn't mean to take you for granted." I smiled sadly. "But you did." He took a step forward and hugged me tighter than I expected. It was the first time in years he'd held me like that. The weight of everything sat heavy between us. Unspoken expectations, sacrifices never acknowledged, love stretched thin by time and obligation. When he pulled away, I saw something new in his eyes, not just guilt understanding. Later that night, I sat by the window with a blanket around my shoulders, watching the stars blink into life. My back still ached. My heart still hurt. But something had shifted. And maybe, just maybe, we'd start seeing each other clearly again, not just as roles to be played, but as people trying our best. The next morning, my body protested every movement. I had barely slept. My bones felt heavy, like I was carrying years of something I hadn't named, yet maybe grief, maybe exhaustion, maybe just time. But as I poured my tea and stared out the window, I felt a strange calm. The kind that comes after a storm, when the winds are gone but the earth still remembers. I didn't expect Daniel to change overnight, but I hoped. Mid-morning, the phone rang. I let it ring twice before picking up. "Hey, Mom." His voice was softer this time. "Hi. Ellie's with Rebecca's mom today," he said. "She offered to help a couple days a week. I thought maybe we could talk more. I've got some time later." I felt a lump form in my throat, but I swallowed it down. "Sure," I said. "Come by around 4. When he arrived, Ellie wasn't with him. He came alone. I noticed he looked tired too, but it was a different kind of tired than mine. His was from running, juggling, trying to be everything to everyone. Mine was from being forgotten while standing still. We sat at the table. I poured tea. He didn't speak at first, just stared at the steam swirling above his cup. "You remember when I was 10, he began slowly, "and I broke my arm on the monkey bars?" I smiled. "You screamed like the world was ending. I remember thinking you'd be mad." "I was terrified," I said, "but not mad." "I think about that now," he said, "about how much you did, and how I never really saw it." My hand tightened around the handle of the teacup. "That's what parenting is, Daniel. You do the work, and most of it stays invisible. It's meant to be that way, I think, until it isn't." He nodded. "I've been angry," I admitted. "Not just about the babysitting. About a lot of things. About the way I started disappearing in your eyes." His eyes welled up slightly, and I saw the boy he used to beta, one who ran to me when he was scared, who believed I could fix anything. "I think I've been scared too," he said. "Scared of not being enough. For Ellie. For work. For everything." "You are enough," I said. "But you have to stop expecting everyone around you to carry you without breaking." He leaned back in his chair, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "I didn't realize I was doing that to you. Now you do." We talked more that day. Really talked. About the past, about his childhood, about how hard it had been for me after his father left. He asked questions he'd never thought to ask before, and I answered with more honesty than I ever had. Something shifted between us. Not everything. Not all at once. But something real. Over the next few weeks, Daniel started making changes. He adjusted his work schedule to be home 2 afternoons a week. He asked a neighbor for help one day, hired a sitter another. I still watched Ellie sometimes because I wanted to, not because I had to. And Ellie? She noticed. She noticed when I smiled more. When I had energy to bake cookies instead of just sit with a heating pad. She noticed when Daniel kissed me on the cheek and said thank you, out loud, in front of her. One day, Ellie asked me, "Grandma, are you happy now?" I looked at her, this little person so full of light and questions. "I'm working on it," I said. She nodded like she understood more than she should. Later that afternoon, Daniel came by with a small cardboard box. "Thought maybe you'd like this," he said, handing it to me. Inside was a photo album, new, empty, leather-bound. "I figured maybe we could fill it together," he said. "You, me, and Ellie." I felt the tears coming, but I didn't hold them back this time. It wasn't about the album. It was about being seen again. About being remembered not just for what I'd done, but for who I still was. We started with old photos, holding baby Daniel, Daniel holding baby Ellie. Then new ones. Ellie playing in the garden, Daniel cooking dinner while I read a story nearby. Each page felt like a stitch in something torn too long. I began writing little notes in the margins of each photo. Stories, thoughts, reminders. I wanted Ellie to have more than just images. I wanted her to know the stories behind them. To know who we were. One night, as I finished placing a photo of Ellie hugging a scarecrow in the yard, Daniel walked in and stood behind me. "I used to think strength meant doing everything alone," he said quietly. "Now I see it means knowing when to ask for help and when to let go." I didn't respond. I just placed my hand over his. He stayed a while that night. We didn't talk much, just sat together, flipping pages, sharing silence that didn't feel empty anymore. But life doesn't stay still. It moves, often faster than we expect. A few months later, I got a call from my doctor. The pain in my back wasn't just old age, it was degenerative disc disease. Manageable, but it would get worse over time. I didn't tell Daniel right away. I didn't want to cloud the peace we were building. But the day I couldn't get out of bed without crying, I knew I had to. He came as soon as I called, panic in his voice. "I'm okay," I said, "but I need help now." He didn't hesitate. He didn't question. "I've got you," he said. And he meant it. He stayed the night, made dinner, tucked Ellie into bed when Rebecca dropped her off. He sat with me and listened when I cried, not just from pain, but from the fear of losing more of myself. "Whatever happens, Mom," he said, holding my hand, "you're not going through it alone." That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. I started physical therapy. It helped a little. Daniel came with me to appointments when he could. Sometimes, Ellie came too, sitting in the waiting room with her crayons, drawing pictures of me as a superhero with a cape and a walking cane. One day, she gave me a drawing of our family. Me, Daniel, Ellie, and a heart floating above our heads. "Grandma," she said, "you're the glue." I laughed through tears. "What makes you say that?" "Because when you were sad, Daddy was sad. And when you smile, he smiles. You make things better." Out of the mouths of babes. That evening, I placed her drawing in the photo album, right in the center. No caption. It didn't need one. One Sunday, Daniel invited me over for dinner. He'd cooked my favorite baked salmon with lemon and herbs. Ellie had made a banner out of construction paper that read, "Thank you, Grandma." I stood in the doorway, taking it all in. The smells, the laughter, the warmth. And something inside me finally unclenched. I was no longer just the babysitter, or the mother, or the woman whose back hurt too much to carry anymore. I was me again. Whole, seen, loved. We ate. We laughed. We told stories. And when Daniel raised a toast, he looked at me with a tenderness I hadn't seen in years. "To Mom," he said, "for showing us what love looks like, even when we didn't deserve it." I raised my glass too, eyes shining. To second chances. A week after that dinner, I began writing again. Not anything grand, just small journal entries. Stories from my youth. Snippets of Daniel's childhood. Recipes my mother taught me. Bits of wisdom I once brushed off as superstition, but now realized were simply survival disguised as tradition. I didn't tell Daniel. It wasn't for him, at least not yet. It was for me. To remember. To hold on to the parts of myself that weren't defined by caregiving or sacrifice. But the house felt different now. Not empty, but open. There was room again for thought, for rest, for being. Still, there were days when I faltered. One morning, I stood in front of the mirror, watching my reflection as I pulled a cardigan over my shoulders. My skin hung a little looser. My eyes had that glassy sheen of a person who had known too much and said too little. And I asked myself something I hadn't dared ask in years. Who am I when I'm not needed? It startled me how loud that question felt in the silence of my bedroom. For decades, my identity had been built on usefulness. I was the mom who always showed up, the woman who never said no, the grandmother who stayed late even when her back screamed in protest. But now that Daniel had found balance, now that Ellie had adjusted to a new rhythm, what was left for me? I didn't have the answer. Not yet. But that day, I decided to walk, just down the street, to the little park with the stone bench under the sycamore tree. The breeze was soft. The air carried the scent of jasmine from a neighbor's fence. I sat beneath the tree and watched the world move. A young couple passed by, holding hands, whispering. An old man fed pigeons, mumbling a song I couldn't recognize. Two kids rode past on bikes, their laughter trailing behind them like smoke. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking after anyone. I wasn't preparing, planning, anticipating. I was just there. And it was enough. A few days later, Daniel called me unexpectedly on a Thursday evening. "Hey, Mom, can we come over?" "Of course," I said, though my knees were stiff and the dishes weren't done. When they arrived, Daniel looked anxious. Ellie bounded in, as always, and ran straight to the fridge to hang her newest drawing. Daniel sat down without speaking, elbows on his knees. "What's going on?" I asked, lowering myself into the chair across from him. He rubbed his hands together. "Rebecca's moving. She got offered a job. In Denver." I felt my breath hitch. "Are you going with her?" He nodded. "We talked about it for a while. Ellie's still young enough to adjust, and it's a good opportunity. My heart tightened. I had expected more time, more little visits, more drawings on my fridge. When? I asked. Next month. I blinked. The air suddenly felt thinner. That's soon. I know. We sat in silence. I didn't cry. Not then. I think part of me had been preparing for this without realizing it. Will I still get to see her? I asked, my voice small. Daniel reached for my hand. Of course. We'll visit. Holidays. Summer breaks. You can come to us, too. I nodded slowly. But we both knew it wouldn't be the same. Ellie came running back, holding up a picture of the three of us. Daddy says we're going on an adventure, she said. I smiled. You'll have so much fun. She frowned. But I'll miss you. I pulled her into my lap, ignoring the pain in my hip. I'll miss you too, sweetheart. But missing someone just means you love them big. So big, it can't always fit in one place. She looked at me with those wide, knowing eyes. I'm going to draw you 100 pictures. Then you won't feel alone. My throat closed, and all I could do was nod. The weeks passed quickly. Too quickly. We started a new photo album together, Ellie's adventure book. She helped decorate the cover with stickers and glitter glue. Each day, we added something: a photo, a note, a drawing. I gave Daniel an envelope on their last day in town. Inside were 2 letters. One for him, one for Ellie, to read when she was older. He didn't open them in front of me, just tucked the envelope into his jacket and hugged me tighter than he had in years. I don't deserve you, he whispered. No, I said, but I gave you to the world anyway. The house was quiet after they left. Not the kind of quiet you enjoy after a long day. The kind that rings. I wandered from room to room that first evening, unsure of what to do with my hands. I turned on the TV, then turned it off. I picked up a book, then set it down. And then I walked into the kitchen. Pinned to the fridge, with a bright pink magnet, was a new drawing. Me, sitting under the sycamore tree. Ellie in my lap. A heart floating above us. In block letters, she had written, "You are my home." I sat at the table and cried until the moon rose. But time, as it does, moved forward. I joined a book club at the library. Took up Tai Chi at the community center. Started writing more often, sometimes just for me, sometimes for the blog a neighbor helped me set up. I called it More Than Useful. Each post was a small piece of my story, memories, reflections, hard-earned truths. I didn't expect anyone to read them. But people did. A woman named Carla commented on every post. She was 72, widowed, and said she hadn't felt seen in years. A single dad wrote to thank me for sharing my letter to Daniel. It helped him understand his own mother better. It was strange, this quiet ripple, reaching places I couldn't see. But it mattered. And slowly, I realized I hadn't stopped being useful. I had just started being seen in a different way. 3 months later, a small package arrived in the mail. No return address, but the handwriting on the label was unmistakable. Inside was a stack of drawings from Ellie, bundled together with a ribbon. There was a note from Daniel, too. Mom. She made one every night before bed. Says it helps her not miss you so much. She keeps a copy of your letters in her backpack. Says they're her grandma spells little magic words she reads when she's scared or lonely. I've been reading your blog. Every post. You're not just a great mom. You're a great writer. A great woman. I wish I'd told you sooner. Love. Daniel. I pressed the pages to my chest and let the weight of it all sink in. I had been so afraid of fading into the background of my own life. But I hadn't disappeared. I had evolved. 3 weeks after that letter from Daniel arrived, I was invited to speak at the community center. It was a simple event, a monthly gathering for older adults. Mostly folks like me. Widowed, retired, weathered by time, and softened by memory. They'd read my blog. Apparently, Carla had been sharing it like wildfire. I don't know what you'd even talk about, I said to her over the phone. Exactly, she replied. You talk, and people listen. You tell the truth, and that's rare. I hesitated. I'd spent most of my life behind the curtain, backstage of everyone else's lives. But something inside me stirred. A voice I hadn't used in years, saying you still have something to give. So I agreed. That Thursday afternoon, I stood in front of 30 people in folding chairs. Some smiled politely. Others stared with quiet expectation. A few looked lost, like I probably did from time to time. I cleared my throat and began. I used to think love meant giving until there was nothing left. A few heads nodded. I used to think I had to earn my place in other people's lives. that I had to be useful to be valued, especially as I got older. A hush fell over the room. But I've learned something these past few months. Maybe the hardest lesson of all. You don't stop being valuable when you stop being needed. And your worth isn't measured by how much you can lift, or how many diapers you change, or how quickly you say yes. Someone wiped a tear from their cheek. I kept going. Your worth is in your story, in your memory, in the quiet wisdom you carry without ever being asked. It's in your ability to still feel deeply, to still grow, even when the world forgets to look your way. I paused, letting the words land. And maybe the greatest thing we can give now is truth, the kind we had to learn the hard way. Afterward, people lined up to thank me. Some cried. Some hugged me. One man said, "I thought I was invisible, but you made me feel seen again." That night, I didn't sleep much, but not from pain for once. It was purpose. It was waking up inside of myself again. Over the next few months, More Than Useful gained traction. Not in a viral, internet fame sort of way, but in the way that matters. People shared it in support groups, in newsletters, churches, retirement homes. I received letters, real ones, with stamps and cursive ink. One woman, 74, wrote from Ohio. She had buried 2 husbands, outlived a son, and now sat alone in a house full of quilts and ghosts. She said reading my posts gave her the courage to start writing again. Just little notes. Just for herself. Another man said he forwarded every blog post to his estranged daughter. It was their only form of contact. The last post, he said, made her call him for the first time in 8 years. I didn't know what to do with this kind of responsibility, but I welcomed it. I let it settle into the corners of my days. I was building something. Not just a blog. A bridge. A new identity. A life where I was still contributing, but not at the cost of my own body or peace. Then, in early spring, I got a video call. Ellie. Her hair had grown longer, pulled into 2 messy pigtails. She was missing a front tooth. Her eyes sparkled, even through the screen. "Grandma," she beamed. "Guess what?" "What, sweetheart?" "I'm gonna play. I'm gonna be the moon." "The moon?" "Yeah. I get to wear silver paint and everything. Daddy says it's messy, but I told him it's magic messy." I laughed, and Daniel appeared in the background, waving. "She's been practicing every night," he said. "We recorded some of it. I'll send it over." "I'd love that." Ellie leaned in close to the screen. "I want you to be there. Even if it's just watching from your phone. You have to see me shine." And my heart cracked, the way only love can. Of course I will. I wouldn't miss it. That night, I watched the video on repeat. There she was, me little moon, twirling on stage, arms wide, face aglow. The costume sagged in one spot, and her lines were half whispered, half shouted. But she beamed with pride. At the end of the video, she looked into the camera and whispered, "This one's for you, Grandma. You helped me shine." I didn't sleep that night either, but I didn't need to. Some things live larger than rest. The following week, I wrote what would become the most shared post on my blog. Title: The Last Role I'll Ever Play. I've played many roles in my life. The daughter, the student, the wife, the single mother, the full-time worker, the midnight healer, the lunch packer, the tooth fairy, the babysitter, the grandma. But the last role I'll ever play is myself. Not the version you needed. Not the version you expected. The one I buried under yes, and sure, and don't worry about it. The woman who still gets up every morning, not because someone needs her, but because she wants to rise. The woman who knows her back aches, but her heart still burns. The woman who has learned that usefulness is a season, but worth is eternal. Within 48 hours, it had 2,000 shares. A podcast invited me to speak. A small press offered to compile my blog posts into a book. A university professor reached out asking if her class could study my writing as part of their Narratives of Aging curriculum. I was stunned. But more than that, I was ready. Daniel called that Sunday. "I read your last post," he said. I cried. At least 3 times. I smiled. Then I did something right. "I'm proud of you, Mom." Those words. I don't think I'd ever heard them from him before. Not like that. Not with weight. "I'm proud of you too," I said. He chuckled. "Ellie wants to start her own blog now. She's calling it Little Moon Thoughts." I laughed. "Of course she is." "I think," he said, his voice softening, "she sees you as more than a grandma now. I think she sees you as kind of a superhero." "I'm just me," I said. "Exactly." One morning in late April, I walked to the sycamore tree again. The bench was warm from the sun. I sat with my notebook, watching petals fall like lazy confetti from the branches above. An older man sat down beside me. He wore a hat too big for his head and smelled faintly of mint and sawdust. Mind if I join? Not at all. He pointed to my notebook. Writer. Late bloomer, I said. He smiled. Those bloomed the brightest. We talked. About nothing and everything. About kids and backs that hurt. About favorite movies and how no one uses stamps anymore. He was a widower. Name was Clarence. I told him I used to believe I had to be needed to matter. You don't anymore? He asked. I've traded needed for known, I said. He looked at me with something like reverence. That's rare. Maybe, I said. But I think it's what we're all really looking for. To be known. Not for what we do, but for who we are. He nodded, his eyes wet. Amen to that. That night, I wrote again. Not for the blog. Not for publication. Just for me. A note I tucked inside my nightstand. I am not just the sum of what I've done. I am who I continue to become. The summer after Ellie's play was quiet. The kind of quiet that settles not just in the house, but in your bones. There were no more early morning knocks on the door. No scattered toys in the hallway. No hurried breakfasts or spilled juice. But there were new things. Letters from readers. Walks with Clarence. Poetry scribbled in the margins of library books. I had started painting again simple watercolors of flowers, trees, and memories. I wasn't any good, but I didn't care. It made me feel alive. One afternoon, I got a call from a local school. A literature teacher had read my blog and asked if I'd come speak to her class teenagers, mostly girls, who were writing personal essays. They don't think their voices matter, she said. I remembered being 16, how small I had felt, how invisible in the shadow of what I was expected to become. I'll come, I said. The classroom smelled like pencil shavings and uncertainty. The students stared at me like I was something between a fossil and a fable. But when I began to really speak, they leaned in. I told them about choices. About giving until you forget what you needed. About finding your voice when you thought it was too late. When I finished, a girl in the back raised her hand. Do you wish you'd done anything differently? I paused. I wish I'd said no more often. I wish I'd trusted that my value didn't have to be proven every day. I wish I had known, earlier, that love and self-erasure are not the same thing. Another girl whispered, I think my mom needs to hear that. I smiled. Then tell her. Or better yet, show her you believe it for yourself. That night, Daniel called. Ellie started writing letters. To you. Like, actual paper letters. She says emails don't smell like love. I laughed. She's not wrong. She says she wants to be a writer when she grows up. Or maybe a planet. A planet. She says that way she can hold everyone, and no one would feel alone. I covered my mouth to keep from crying. She misses you. I miss her more than I thought possible. There was a pause. We're thinking about coming back for Christmas, he said. Spend a week. Maybe 2. I'd like that. And Mom. Yes. I started writing too. I blinked. You did. Journaling. Letters. Things I never said. To you. To Rebecca. To myself. It helps. I couldn't speak. I just listened to the sound of my son growing again, in his own way. Fall arrived, all burnt orange and soft winds. Clarence and I started meeting every Sunday. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we didn't. Sometimes he brought music on a little speaker, and we sat with eyes closed, letting the songs say what we didn't need to. One Sunday, he brought 2 sandwiches and a folded piece of paper. What's this? I asked. He blushed a little. I wrote you something. I unfolded the paper. It was a poem. About me. About the first day he saw me under the sycamore tree. About how I looked like a woman who'd lost and found herself at the same time. I thought maybe, he said, voice trembling. We're never too old for new things. I reached for his hand. We're not. That afternoon, he kissed me for the first time. It wasn't fireworks. It was gentler than that. Like coming home to a place you didn't know you missed. The holidays arrived with cinnamon and grief. Daniel and Ellie came home. The house came alive again, blankets on the floor, hot chocolate mugs on every surface, giggles echoing down the hallway. But there was something else too. My hands shook more often now. The pain in my back had traveled down my legs. Some mornings, I struggled to stand. I didn't want to say anything. Not yet. I didn't want Christmas to be remembered that way. But Daniel noticed. You're wincing again, he said one night after Ellie had gone to bed. I'm fine, I lied. He didn't push. But the next morning, I found him researching back clinics, physical therapy, mobility tools. He made tea and sat beside me. I don't want to lose you, he said. You won't. I didn't mean just physically. I looked at him, this man who used to sleep curled beside me after nightmares, now a father himself, now full of his own ghosts. I'm still here, I said, just slower. He nodded. I see you more clearly now than I ever did when I was a kid. That's how it works, I said. Clarity comes when we stop needing people to perform. He rested his head on my shoulder. I'm sorry it took me so long. I'm just glad you arrived. The night before they left, Ellie crawled into bed beside me. Grandma, she whispered, are you ever scared? I looked at her so small, so aware. Sometimes. What do you do? I remember that I've survived every fear so far. She thought for a moment. Daddy says you're really strong. I am, but not because I never fall, because I get up. She reached under her pillow and pulled out a tiny folded paper. It's a spell, she said, so you don't forget. I unfolded it. Inside, in shaky letters, she'd written, you are made of stars and stories. I pressed it to my heart. Thank you, little moon. When they left the next day, I didn't cry at the airport. Not because I wasn't sad, but because something inside me had settled. This was the rhythm of love coming, going, returning. Clarence picked me up. He held my hand all the way home. No words needed. That night, I wrote one final post for the year. Title, When the Body Slows, Let the Soul Speak Louder. Age is not an ending. It's a deepening. The body softens. The roles fall away. But what's left? The truth. The part of you that's been watching quietly all along. That part is brave. That part is wise. That part is what your children need. Not your hands. Not your spine. Your soul. Show them how to age with grace. With boundaries. With dignity. Show them how to love themselves by watching you love yourself. You are not a burden. You are a beacon. Winter melted into spring. I turned 70. Daniel surprised me with a visit. Ellie brought a binder labeled Stories We'll Tell Forever. Inside were printed blog posts, drawings, letters. This is your book now, she said. Daniel smiled. We thought it was time you saw what you built. I didn't know what to say, so I said the only thing that felt right. I thought I was just surviving. You were, Daniel said. But you were also teaching us how. I still have bad days. There are mornings when the ache is too much, when I move like a rusted hinge. There are nights I stare at the ceiling, wondering what comes next. There are memories I wish I could relive, and some I pray to forget. But there is also this. Laughter from the porch as Clarence tries to teach Ellie how to whistle. Emails from strangers who say my words gave them courage. Long afternoons with my hands in the soil, planting things I may never see bloom. And a story, my story, carved into paper and pixel, passed from hand to hand, heart to heart. I told my son my back couldn't take daily babysitting. He said, then what good are you? And I told him, I am the roots that hold this family upright. I am the voice you hear in your quietest hour. I am the witness to your growing, your breaking, your becoming. I am the seam that held you when the world came apart. I am good. Still.